What was your best memory of the Mike Pence presidential campaign? I mean, Mike, we hardly knew you. No?
I love Mike Pence. I have come to admire late Mike Pence. Late Mike Pence.
Yeah, but I have actually. I'm not a Pence basher, even though I did this. But I mean, it isn't. McKay Coppin's new book has Mitt Romney describing Pence this way. No one had been more loyal, more willing to smile when he saw absurdities, more willing to ascribe God's will to things that were ungodly than Mike Pence. All of that's true. And, that's not what did him in. I mean, the thing about it is that he was the artifact of the Republican Party before Trump. He actually had this sort of nostalgic, hey, let's bring back Ronald Reagan. But none of that actually mattered because in the end, his unforgivable sin was that he wouldn't go along with the coup. I mean, right. It is worth just stopping right there to realize that in the last week, Tom Emmer had his candidacy for the speakership blown up because he wouldn't go along with the big lie in the coup. And Mike Pence, the former vice president of the United States, his entire campaign was dead on arrival because he wouldn't go along with the coup. And there we are, right? I mean, this is
this used to be a joke for me. I used to joke that how many coups do you have to support, I said, to lose the support of this party? And the answer, Charlie, there's an answer. The answer is 0. Any number greater than 0. If you support any number of coups greater than 0, you can be Speaker of the House.
Right.
You can be the presidential nominee. But if you only support 0, you can't.
I was thinking this morning, and I'm sorry to go off sort of randomly, of the real problems that we face right now. And I think one of them is, we talk about fascism, we talk about all these other things. I think the real danger to democracy is just simple exhaustion. You think about that speaker's election last week where every single normie ended up voting for Mike Johnson, full-throated election denier, coup supporter. And it's a collapse of will. It's a collapse of principle. All of that is true. But ultimately, it was just like people were just tired of it, right? They just gave up. And I mean, isn't that how authoritarians win? When everybody's like, okay, whatever, I cannot take this anymore. I'm not going to pay attention to the news. I'm not going to be engaged. It's all just too freaking exhausting. I mean, right. And that's how we got Mike Johnson, right?
So, okay, I agree about the exhaustion, but there's a specific thing that happened here, which is, so was it Daniel Patrick Moynihan who wrote about defining deviancy down?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this was Moynihan, a Democrat, but this was a fundamentally conservative insight, right?
Yes.
You lower and lower your standards. And I think that is essentially what's happened here. You literally had House Republicans saying, the best of them, such as it is, saying, if we were to impose that standard that you couldn't have voted to overturn the election, we wouldn't be able to get a speaker. So they had to drop that standard. And that's essentially what happened here. They normalized because they had to, because it's a pathological community. They had to accept it.
Yeah. So I don't want to necessarily pick on anyone because I understand how difficult it is, to catch up on the weekend and to catch up on all of the things that are going on. But I was watching a cable show this morning, and they were focusing on Donald Trump confusing Sioux City with Sioux Falls, which is kind of funny. He thinks he hey, Sioux Falls, and somebody has to take him aside and whisper, Mr. President, you're actually different state. You're here in Sioux City and everything. And it's like, okay, fine. But okay, it's like that was not the worst thing that happened this weekend. I mean, you had Donald Trump, and where do you even start with all this? He's bringing back the Muslim ban. They're going to deport anybody that opposes Israel at this point, and it's like doesn't even like move the needle. He's sucking up to Viktor Orban again, showing that he's got this kink for authoritarian strongmen, even though he confuses Orban as being the head of Turkey. Okay, let's leave that aside.
That's right.
Doesn't know where Hungary is on a map. He thinks that Hungary is, adjacent to Russia, shares a border with you. It doesn't. It's like one thing after another. And then he actually once again suggests, and I'm just sorry because I think we just gotten like, okay, do we have to talk about Donald Trump anymore? Donald Trump was bragging about threatening our allies, our NATO allies, that he would not defend them from an attack from Russia. I mean, I am old enough to know when something like that would have been disqualifying. The spoiler alert here is that it will not even cause a ripple in the Republican Party. So we play that little soundbite in case you think I'm exaggerating. This is Donald Trump in either Sioux City or Sioux Falls. I don't give a say really, say that he would have betrayed our Article 5 obligations to our NATO allies if they didn't pay up or something. Listen to Donald Trump.
I'm not going to protect you any longer. And I remember the head of a country stood up and said, does that mean that if Russia attacks my country, you will not be there? That's right. That's what it means. I will not protect you.
I mean, there was certainly a time when if any Republican had said anything remotely like that, he would have been disqualified. And so I guess part of the exhaustion problem is that on a daily basis, we get so much disinformation, so many outrageous comments from Donald Trump. It is sort of like people have almost tuned it out, right? I mean, the Muslim ban was a big thing at one time. Remember? I mean, actually, there was a time when he said, I, Donald J. Trump, will ban all Muslims. And Paul Ryan had to, have a press conference saying, this does not represent what the Republican Party is. Now, 8 years later, we're going, yeah, that is what the Republican Party is. And so it doesn't even make the top 5 news stories of the day. It doesn't even make the top 12 news stories of the day.
So there's a couple things going on there with the, first of all, in terms of what Trump said about NATO. The thing you have to understand about Donald Trump, in case you didn't already, is that Donald Trump has no conception of right and wrong in foreign policy, good guys, bad guys. He only understands money. So his entire focus has been on getting the Europeans, our real enemies, according to Trump, to pay more money for NATO. It's just a financial, are they paying enough? And that, to Trump's just an idiot, but Putin is not an idiot. And Putin knows that because that's Trump's thing, if he can get Trump back into power in the United States, that tears apart NATO. And that's Putin's goal number one. So Trump's playing right into that. The thing about the Muslim ban, it's a little different. Trump is actually not bringing back the Muslim ban. The essence of Trump isn't hating Muslims. It is racial and ethnic and religious generalization as a whole. Yeah. And so the current version of this is not banning all Muslims. It's banning people from all these countries. And at the moment, it's anybody from Gaza. And it's important that this is anybody from Gaza. There's no distinction being made here between terrorists and innocent people. For God's sake, Charlie, there's no distinction being made between adults and children, because half the population of Gaza is children. The position in the Republican Party right now, and it's gone way beyond Trump, is not just ban Muslims, but ban anybody from Gaza, because they're all being taught to hate Jews. So it's the same thing as the Muslim ban in terms of making unwarranted generalizations and categorically prohibiting certain people from the United States, but it's not specifically about Muslims.
Well, and of course, predictably, Ron DeSantis is all in on all of this. He's calling for the deportation. The deportation of anybody that participated in these marches, but also more specifically, he's using the power of the state of Florida to shut down student organizations that might have taken positions he disagreed with. I guess, look, I mean, I am concerned about some of the things that are coming out of the universities. You know that. We have talked about this. But I'm trying to reconcile this with the right's claimed enthusiasm for free speech. It's all about free speech. And then it comes to Ron DeSantis, and time again, he basically says, yes, this is the free state of Florida, except if you're a student organization that says X, Y, or Z, or you're a corporation that disagrees with me on all of this. So how do these folks square the circle on free speech and yet are now talking about deporting, shutting down, banning based on speech?
Well, let's be fair to Ron DeSantis, right? He cares as much about free speech as he does about free markets. That is to say, not at all, right? And so we've seen with his behavior toward Disney that Ron DeSantis personifies what has happened to the Republican Party. It has abandoned any of the principles that were in his platform about freedom, about markets and speech, and it has become simply a culturally right-wing party. So it will use any means available, including the state, in fact, especially the state, to enforce its cultural agenda, right? So I'm going to punish a corporation, Disney, that engages in speech I don't like. And the same thing with college campuses. What does this work? I can't remember, Students for Justice in Palestine or something like that. Yeah. Some organization. And DeSantis has concocted this story that this organization has violated a Florida law about material support to terrorists. The law prohibits that, right? And he's claiming that because some members of this organization said something identifying with Hamas, that makes them, that's material support. That's not material support. It's free speech. It's repellent free speech. But the point, as you know, Charlie, and as you've said before, the point of protecting free speech is not protecting popular free speech. It's protecting unpopular free speech.
Yeah, no, and I want to make it clear that I think that you can push back against speech that you disagree with. You can ridicule it. You can condemn it. But Ron DeSantis doesn't draw that line. He wants to use the power of government to punish, which is precisely what the First Amendment, I thought, would have prohibited.